Hey everybody, Pastor Greg here. I'm excited about life, and I know that you are too, because life is so good. It keeps getting better all the time, and things are always working out for you. I have two things I want to share with you. This summer is jam-packed with so many beautiful things. The first is that our 4T's Prosperity course is starting very soon, on June 29th. It's the last Thursday of this month. If you're interested in transforming your life, understanding what prosperity really is, expanding your life financially, in your relationships, in your health, in your career, this is the class that you want to take. We're having a Q&A session on the end of this month, on the 24th, the last Sunday of this month. Stay after service and learn more about the class. If you know that you're ready to take the class, simply go to our website, www.celebrationsc.org/4T, and register as soon as possible. It's filling up. We only have a limited amount of seats for this class. The other thing I want you to do is save the date. Next month on July 23rd, we will be having our annual Family and Friends Day, Summer Lovin' Family and Friends Day service and potluck. It's going to be a wonderful time of food, fellowship, fun, and music. If you're in the tri-state area, or even if you're far off, it doesn't matter. We have people coming in from all over the country to be with us on that day. I promise it will be awesome. I promise it'll be a lot of fun. Save the date and plan to be there with us. We have another powerful message in store for you. Let's get into it. Well, good morning, CSC. How are you? Happy Father's Day to all the fathers in the room and all the fathers that will be watching later. I see you, brothers. I see you. I see you. I see you. I appreciate you for being that protector and provider. Sometimes it's a tough job, but honor is what allows us to continue to do what we do. And commitment is what allows us to continue to do what we do. Yes, yes. I see you, brothers. All right, beautiful. So we're going to jump right in. I just want to review quickly where we've been this month as we're reimagining the Bible, looking at the book of Psalms. Week 1, welcome to the neighborhood. We had to establish some things about what we're talking about because we have this word Lord that we see so often in Scripture, and particularly in the book of Psalms. And that word, Jehovah or Yahweh, depending on which translations you look at, we dug a little deeper into what that means. Jehovah meaning the self-existing one. And we went even further to look at Yahweh, or the tetragrammaton, which cannot be uttered, that name which cannot be uttered. And then we begin to understand that actually this word God or Lord is really an action word, that God is a verb, that God is activity. It's not a person, place, or thing, a person that's sitting on a mountain judging us, but it's the very activity of life, which then takes us into looking at what consciousness is. And so we went to quantum theory and looked at the 3 attributes of consciousness, that it's not material, meaning it could become anything and everything at any time, that it's inherently creative, and it's inherently intelligent. Welcome to the neighborhood. That's what we're talking about. That's where you live. That's where you move. That's where you have your being. And so now that we know where we're living, how can we be a law-abiding citizen in this neighborhood? Law, here we're talking about the law that is always operating for us, for our good. And so in order to be a law-abiding citizen, first it requires belief. And belief is not something that you actually have to acquire. You just may have to learn how to believe constructively versus destructively, because it's always done unto you according to your belief. So when you think it won't work or believe it won't work, the law is still working. Belief, then we go to trust. Now, trust is interesting. If we trust the law, the way we must learn to trust spiritual law is the same way that we trust when we pour water into an ice tray and put it in the freezer. We trust the natural laws that will freeze that water into ice. Yes, yes. Have you ever worried? Have you ever fretted? Have you ever cried? Have you ever rolled around on the ground? Have you ever called your best friend and said, I don't know. I just put some water in the freezer. I don't know if it's going to freeze. We trust in this natural law. Spiritual law is natural law as well. Trust. And then a law-abiding citizen demonstrates. Out of that belief and out of that trust, we now demonstrate what is possible, and we become examples on the planet of the things that are possible. So we know where we live. We know how to be a law-abiding citizen. And so now we're going to talk about how to get back home. In thinking and preparing for this message, the image that first came to my mind was what it feels like to be lost. And I had in my mind a child that maybe they were lost in a shopping mall. And when you're a child, when you're small, everyone is bigger than you. You're in an unfamiliar place. You don't know where you're going. If we're adults and we're lost, you may be driving and you're lost. That may or may not cause fear. But have you ever been lost, but then also been in a place that was unsafe? Have you ever been lost and you turned a corner and you realize this neighborhood is not the neighborhood I need to be in? And when you're in that space, when you're in that place, the one thing that you want more than anything, not just to get somewhere familiar, but you want to get back home. Because home is what represents safety and familiarity for us. When we feel lost and unsafe, all we want to do is to get back to safety. And taking that idea of being lost, maybe feeling like a child in a mall, or that idea of being lost and unsafe, you went into the wrong neighborhood and you don't know if you're going to get robbed. I think this is where we are collectively. When we consider the events of this week, when we consider yet another not guilty verdict, I think we feel just like someone who has gone into a neighborhood they shouldn't be in and they feel unsafe. They feel lost because nothing outside of them feels good or feels safe. This external world feels unsafe. It feels terrorizing. Yes, yes. For many of our brothers and sisters here on this planet right now, not just in this country, but on this planet, the world feels terrorizing. Here in this country, we're constantly seeing things taken away. Cuba. We're constantly seeing laws being changed that are not operating in our favor. It feels unsafe. It feels lost out here. Just as if you were in a neighborhood that you shouldn't have been in, and again, you might get robbed or somebody might knock you upside your head. You're not where you're supposed to be. The one thing we want more than anything is to get back home. We're in this place right now where our external world is creating more separation than unity. This is what feeling lost feels like. And so more than anything, right here and right now, collectively, there's a yearning, there's a desire, even if it's not spoken or understood on a conscious level, there's a desire to get back to safety. There's a desire to get back home. And so that's what we're going to deal with today. How do we get back home? It takes me to Psalm 91, verse 1 through 6. I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version. You who live in the shelter of the Most High, who abide in the shadow of the Almighty, will say to the Lord, the self-existing one, that which is not material, that which is inherently creative, that which is inherently intelligent. You will say to that thing, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust, for he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and the deadly pestilence. He will cover you from with his pinions and under his wings, and you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, or the arrow that flies by day, or the pestilence that stalks in darkness, or the destruction that wastes at noonday. Now, many of us may be more familiar with the King James Version, which says that he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High. Again, same idea. Here in the New Revised Version, we're hearing shelter of the Most High. And that's an interesting phrase, shelter of the Most High. In King James Version, we get the secret place of the Most High. And I actually like secret place better. And why is that? Because what the writer of the psalm here is talking about is this place that we go to when we go within. And it's a secret place. But what happens when we hear words like secret and a secret place, it suggests that it's something that everybody doesn't have. It suggests that it's a place that everybody can't get to. It suggests, if you move a little further, that you got to be holy. You got to wear a certain type of clothes. You got to dress a certain way. You got to speak a certain way. You got to act a certain way. You got to dot every I and cross every T. And then you have access to the secret place, which the secret place does some amazing things. It delivers you from the snare of the fowler and deadly pestilence. We're going to talk about that. It covers you with its wings, and it's a shield and a buckler. But this idea of secret, again, suggests that there's some kind of wall and you can't get in unless you're on the right team. Well, the beauty of this idea of secret place, all that is being talked about here, is that this place is unique to you. It's a secret because I can't access that place within you that is your connection to source. It's a secret place because you cannot access that connection within me that is my connection to source. It's unique. It's a secret. Not a barrier, but simply I cannot see it, I cannot touch it, I cannot taste it, I cannot qualify it, but you can by your own experience, by your own connection to it. No one can validate that for you, and no one can unvalidate it for you. That's what makes it a secret. Do we hear that? And so even as we understand, then this is why the beautiful word of shelter I like. It actually suggests intimacy. You who live in the shelter, in the most intimate place with the Most High, who abide in the shadow of the Almighty. When you're in that place, when you've connected to that secret place, and we're going to talk about how to connect to that place, then you will say, my refuge and my fortress, my God, this action word, in whom I trust. This thing that can become anything and everything whenever you need it to be. That's what I trust in. This thing that you know is inherently creative and inherently intelligent. That's what you trust in. This thing that you know can never judge you. That's what you're trusting in. This thing that calls you perfect, whole, and complete. That's what you're trusting in. This thing that says you remain as I created you. That's what you trust in. And then when you trust in that thing, then you can affirm certain words. It says here, it will deliver you. It will deliver you from the snare of the fowler. Now, unfortunately, when we read many things in the First or the Second Testament, you know, these words don't mean much to us, the snare of the fowler. This was it made perfect sense to those that were living and hearing these words as they were written. But what it's saying is, it will deliver you from those who are hunting you. I think that would be a powerful word for some of our brothers in this country right now. Understanding that there is something that will protect you from those that are hunting you. Because it seems that black brothers are being hunted right now. Yes, yes? And then it goes on and it says, and you will not fear the terror of the night or the arrow that flies by day. Terror. I like that word. I think it's an appropriate word for what's going on in our country again. Many people don't want to talk about it. Let me go on record and say that it is terrorism, what's happening in this country by definition. But here we have in this text saying that this thing that is not material, inherently creative and inherently intelligent, this secret connection, unique and intimate connection that we have, we will not fear the terror or the arrow that flies by day. Interesting idea. Now, last year, and even to some extent this year, Pastor Yolanda and I talk about it all the time. I felt very heavy. You know, we had the shooting in Orlando, the Pulse nightclub, and it's now been a year. Then we had the shooting deaths of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. And so many things have happened since we opened the doors of CSC, as Pastor Yolanda and I were visioning CSC in December of 2012. That was when the Sandy Hook shooting happened. And not a few weeks after we opened the doors of CSC, the bombing happened in Boston after the Boston Marathon, and we could go on and on and on. Now, one of the things we've been clear about is CSC is a call for love. We recognize that every act of fear is a call for love, and so we were clear why we received the message to open CSC when we did. But even with that said, and I think I said it last year, I was starting to get tired having to preach messages of encouragement and hope in the midst of not guilty verdicts, in the midst of yet another shooting. And one of the things that I've talked about over the year is that when we access this place of consciousness through meditation, we have the possibility to really change our planet. I highlighted there was a beautiful study that happened in the 90s in the summer in Washington, D.C., where thousands of meditators came together for that summer and changed the climate of D.C. When I say the climate, not the weather. And now we know generally crime rises in the summer due to the heat, particularly in cities. During that summer, as thousands of meditators came practicing the transcendental meditation technique, murders went down. The number of people checking in the hospitals went down. It decreased. And these are quantifiable numbers. You can find these in peer-reviewed studies. And it reflects to us that there's a possibility to use consciousness to actually change what's going on in our cities. Now, it wasn't just Washington, D.C. This book, Permanent Peace, by Robert Oates, How to Stop Terrorism and War Now and Forever. It highlights the 50-plus studies that have been done proving, not just in the United States, but in the Middle East, proving, not just in the Middle East, but if you remember the conflicts in the 80s in Nicaragua, where they were able to actually stop bombings and stop killings. For the days that the thousands of meditators were meditating, there was ease, there was peace. And this book also takes you into the quantum theory of why this works. This is why we started with quantum theory in the first week. If you want to understand deeper this idea of consciousness and the three attributes of consciousness, it's all here. But it also takes us into understanding the studies and what happened. And so when I hear that word terror, it brings me back to this text. Now, that may sound far-fetched. You mean thousands of people can just meditate and police will stop shooting black brothers? Yes, I know that to be true. Right? And it's been proven on this planet. Now, even as it sounds far-fetched, in the 60s, when Maharishi Mahesh Yogi came to the United States talking about transcendental meditation, that seemed far-fetched. When he said that through transcendental meditation, you can lower your blood pressure and not have to take medication anymore. Shout out, yes, we have people here in the building who are living that truth. When he said that through transcendental meditation, again, you can no longer have to take pills for cholesterol. When he said that the plague of today is stress. Now, we know medically that the top 10 causes of death in this country are stress-related illnesses, heart issues. Lead to heart attacks. And so if you reduce the stress in your body naturally heals itself. In the 60s, they thought he was crazy. But here and now, we have the American Heart Association affirming and only recommending the transcendental meditation technique as a technique for patients to use in order to heal. So yes, it took some time. But it was always true. It was true back in the 1960s. And so if it takes us some time, that's fine. It's true here and now. And again, we have quantifiable, peer-reviewed studies that show that through tapping into this place of consciousness, we can change this planet. Now, of course, here at CSC, we encourage you to learn transcendental meditation if you so desire. But that can be a barrier, right? There's a cost involved. And so I hear you saying, okay, Pastor Greg, that's really cool, and I might get the book, and I believe you. But what can I do right now? Is there something I can do right now? Because the situation is critical. We feel unsafe in every way, shape, or form. I didn't even get into all the other ways that we feel unsafe. Sometimes, it happened to me yesterday, sometimes I'm so viscerally aware and can feel, the section of the subway that I was on, there were 4 women sitting near me, and this guy came on the train, and he was kind of erratic and acting really crazy, and I could feel their sense of fear. I could feel how unsafe they felt in that moment, right? And I was sort of calculating what I would be able to do. I'm, using my MMA techniques. If I had to knock them out, I would have knocked them out, right? And so women, I see you and I hear you, and I know that for many reasons you can feel unsafe just walking these streets or being in the subway. There's so many places in our lives where we're desiring protection and need protection. And so what can we do now? If we recognize that by tapping into this secret place, we can do some powerful things. Again, we can be protected from those who are hunting us. We can be protected from the terror of night or the arrow by day. I want to take us to Emile Cady's Lessons in Truth. The 9th and 10th lesson, or the 9th and 10th chapters, the secret place of the Most High and finding the secret place. What's beautiful is Dr. Emile Cady, she was definitely an enlightened soul and was writing these words well before her time. And when you read her words, particularly for those of you who are familiar with the TM technique, you'll almost think she's talking about this technique. But what we see is that she tapped into that realm and found this realm through her own practice. And so I want to share with you what she shares with us. 3 words, 3-step process. The first is withdraw. The second is affirm. And the third is be still. How do you practice the stillness? How do you get to this place of consciousness? How do you tap into that inherently intelligent place? Because see, here's the other thing. What we need are new ideas. We're still looking to a flawed justice system to give us justice. It will never work. And so we need to go to this place that's inherently intelligent to pull forth some intelligent ideas. Now, I've said it before, I honor my elders, I honor those who have gone before us and the techniques and tactics that they used in the 50s and 60s. They worked then, they're not going to work now. And so we find ourselves in a knee-jerk reaction trying to do the same things that we've learned to do, and those that are in power laugh because they know they're ineffective. They've already maneuvered so that those things don't affect them anymore, which means we have to go to this secret place, this place where all things are possible, this thing that can see every possibility and create new ideas. That's where we got to go. That's the only way we're going to change our situation. So what's step 1? Withdraw. Reminds me of the first step of visioning. Get in a place where you will not be disturbed. Withdraw. Very simple. So you want to set aside some time. If you're going to do this in the morning, as part of your morning practice, set aside some time to do that. Schedule it. If you have time in the afternoon, schedule it. If you have time in the evening. But withdraw and go to a place that you will not be disturbed. And just as we did today, of course, you can focus on your breathing and just calm yourself. Now, one of the things we tend to hear or think about meditation is that proper meditation means you're not thinking anything. And that's a huge flaw. It's impossible. I like the way Emile Cady talks about it here. She says that what we know, the principle is that nature abhors a vacuum. So if you try not to think thoughts, and maybe you do that successfully for a little bit, something is going to fill it. By principle, by law, something has to fill an empty space. Even this space that we think is empty right now is not. There are cells and molecules that are actually filling this entire space. There's no such thing as empty space. Nature abhors a vacuum. And so if you empty your mind of thought, what usually happens? Then you start thinking about your grocery list. Then you start thinking about where you got to go later. Then you start arguing in your head with your partner, something that they did that got on your nerves. Because nature abhors a vacuum. So what she teaches us is that we have to then place something there consciously, affirm. And so here's where we get into spiritual mind treatment and affirmative prayer, where she says that we can begin to speak an affirmative prayer to just prepare ourselves. As we've withdrawn from the outside world, as we sang in the song, I close my eyes so that I can see more clearly. With withdraw, we close our eyes. And you can affirm one of the Psalms if that feels good to you. You can affirm a hymn, or you can affirm a song lyric. We recognize that affirmative prayer is not begging or beseeching or asking God to show up. This is your secret, unique place. You already have the connection, so you don't beg or beseech, but you could say things like this. She writes this in the text. You abide within me. You are alive there now. You have all power. You are now the answer to all our desire. You now radiate yourself from the center of my being to the circumference and out into the visible world as the fullness of my desire. You begin to affirm who and what God is. You begin to affirm that this thing is here now. It lives within you. You affirm. You withdraw. You affirm. Speak the words that feel good for you. And then finally, be still. Wait. Now, it's interesting because this be still, she also advises us not to stress or strain. And there's a beautiful example she uses, because when we want to access God, and mainly because we've been taught that God is outside of us, so we feel like we have to yearn for God, that we have to stress and we have to strain to try to get to this connection. We don't have to do that. But if we try to do that, it would be like a seed that's in the ground that was told that the rays of the sun are what nourish you. And so then the seed is just stretching and trying to break through the ground to get more sun, when all it has to do is just be. And the sun's rays permeate it. But it goes even deeper, because she says the seed needs to send roots downward while it keeps its face turned towards the sun and let itself be drawn upward from the sun. And this reminds me of many of the metaphors that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi uses when he talks about transcendental meditation. That what we're doing when we access this place of consciousness, it is like our roots digging deep into the ground, and then we're in the same way that the roots drink the water and then fill the entire plant or fill the entire tree, we, by tapping into consciousness from our root, are now filling and healing our entire body. He goes on and he talks about the fact that when the water is absorbed through the roots, if you think of a tree, the highest most leaf is not aware of what's going on deep down in the ground, but it's benefiting from what's happening deep down in the ground. And so when we access that place of consciousness, when we decide and allow our roots to dig downward and absorb that which is God, that which is ourselves, that which is our shelter, that which is our secret place, then every aspect of our life, our very being, our physical being, but then everything outside of us benefits from that. And so when we do that collectively, that's what's happening. See, from our physical eyes, we think there's no way, it doesn't make sense, that this non-physical thing can affect something happening out in the world. But does it make sense that deep down underground where no one can see, the water is absorbed by the roots and it can affect the highest, most leaf of that tree? That makes sense, right? It's the same principle. So we withdraw, we affirm, and we be still. This is how we access this place. And it'll take some time. It'll take some practice. You might judge yourself a little bit the first few times you do it. Oh, good, it's okay. But out of your willingness and out of your diligence, that connection will happen. She also says, if you find your mind wandering, bring it back. You can bring it back by coming back to that affirm step. And you can say things like, it is being done now. You are working in me now. I am receiving that which I desire, and so forth. Do not look for signs and wonders, but just be still and know that the very thing you want is flowing in and will come forth into manifestation, either at once or a little further on. It's the same thing with TM. That's one of the things that I love that you're taught when you go through instruction, that meditation is for your outside life. So if you meditate 20 minutes for twice a day, that's not the thing, right? You're doing that in the same way that you eat a meal, however long it takes to eat that meal. You do that so that you can function out in the world. We understand that, yes? So in the same way, when she's saying, do not look for signs and wonders, but just be still and know that the very thing you want is flowing, you will begin to see the results in your outside life. Know that it must happen. Because just as you know, if you pour water into a plant and you know that the roots are going to absorb all that it needs and that plant is going to continue to grow and you're not worried about it because you understand it's a natural law, so this is a natural law. Our way of tapping in is just different than the plants, but it's the same natural process that's happening. And so at the end of this psalm, in Psalm 91, one of the closing verses, Psalm 15, it says, when they call to me, this is the Lord saying this, when they call to me, I will answer them. I will be with them in trouble, and I will rescue and honor them. When we tap into this place, we have this assurance. When we tap into this place, when we go to this shelter, to this secret place of the Most High, we will always receive an answer. It's a guarantee. Just as we talked about that law, that it's a guarantee that if you take water and put it under certain conditions, a certain temperature, it will freeze. It's a guarantee. So this is a guarantee. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue and honor them. And so in closing, Emile Cady offers this idea, and I think this is where we want to get to in our daily practice of withdrawing, affirming, and being still. She says in one of Edward Everett Hale's stories, he speaks of a little girl who, amidst her play with the butterflies and birds in a country, she used to run into a nearby chapel frequently to pray. And after praying, she always remained perfectly still a few minutes, waiting, she said, to see if God wanted to say anything. This is our opportunity. If you're feeling lost because of things that are taking place in this country, if you're feeling unsafe because of things that are taking place in this country or around our world, I encourage you to become like this little girl. Spend some time in your personal chapel and wait. Be still to see if this inherently intelligent and inherently creative, not material thing has something to say. You may be surprised at what comes forth. There's some things that can be birthed through you that will change this country. There are ways that you can impact your immediate circle that will change this country. There are organizations that you may be the one to create that can change this planet. But on an individual level, if it is true that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, then if we individually take the time to connect to this place on a daily basis and heal our individual lives, that ripples out and heals your family. That ripples out and heals your city. That ripples out and heals your state. That ripples out and heals your country. That ripples out and heals your planet. That ripples out and heals this galaxy. That ripples out and it heals this universe. That ripples out and heals all of the other trillions of known universes. It starts with me. With that, I invite everybody to stand. And Soul 21, if you can just sing softly, I get still and I let God love me. I get still and I let God love me. I get still. It is time. This is the call for us. Stillness before action. It is out of the stillness that we get the inspired action. Please hear me. It's not that we're not going to do anything, but it'll be inspired. And if it's inspired, that word inspired means God breathed. That means this inherently intelligent thing, all power, all love is with you in that inspired idea, is with you in that inspired action. So we get still and we let God love us, Lord. I get sing it with us if you can. I get still. We're making an affirmation to do something different. Yes, we see what's going on in our country. We see what's going on all around this earth. But we recognize that stillness must precede action. We are willing to withdraw. We are willing to affirm the truth that we have a secret place. And out of this connection with the secret place, we are delivered. We are delivered from those who are hunting us. We are delivered from terrorism. We are delivered from the proverbial arrows. And then we have the guarantee that we will be heard. We have the guarantee that this thing, this love will never leave us. This love will never forsake us. This love will show up on our behalf and move away every obstacle. And I let God love me. Mother, Father, God, we are so grateful and thankful for this secret, intimate shelter, this secret, intimate connection that we have. We are grateful to know that it is not something that is different than us or outside of us, but it is our inherent connection that we have with you. We recognize that although we can't see it, just as the highest point of the tree cannot see its roots, so the roots exist and so that connection exists. We acknowledge the connection today. We acknowledge the connection today because we recognize that we need that connection as we have never needed it before. We acknowledge this connection today because we recognize that there are some things that we want to change on this planet. We acknowledge this connection today because we recognize that there are some things that we want to heal within ourselves. We acknowledge this connection today because we recognize that there are some things that we want to heal within our families. We acknowledge this connection today because we recognize that there are things that we want to heal within our mind. And as we acknowledge that connection, immediately healing takes place. As we acknowledge that connection, immediately ease takes place. As we acknowledge that connection, immediately worry begins to dissipate. As we acknowledge that connection, immediately anxiety begins to dissipate. As we acknowledge that connection, our bodies begin to change. As we acknowledge that connection, the cells in our body respond to that connection and begin to come back online to who and what they truly are. As we acknowledge that connection, we find that our brothers and sisters are well. As we acknowledge that connection, we find wellness and well-being throughout our lives, throughout our days, and everywhere that we look. We acknowledge that connection so that we may heal our very lives. I am so grateful and thankful for the connection. Out of the awareness of this connection, we will change our planet. Out of the awareness of this connection, we will change our world. I stand firmly in the idea that unity will happen on this planet. I stand firmly and know that humanity will elevate to our highest reality, that humanity will begin to live according to who and whose we really are. And for this truth, I am so very grateful. I release this word now, and together we affirm, amen, amen. Ashe. Ashe. And so it is. So it is. Thank you, God.